Hello everyone. Welcome back to RT-Cam. Let's dive into part 4 of our exciting journey from Bengaluru to Kolkata, where we are driving right through the wild weather brought by Cyclone Michaung. In this leg of the trip, we start off from the Nellore region in Andhra Pradesh, right next to Kakuturu Cheruvu, and head towards Maddipadu and Vijayawada, cruising through NH16, while battling heavy rain and gusty winds. We covered around 175 kilometers during this stretch, and yes, a red alert was already in place. We are now passing through Nellore city, and if you look ahead, Visakhapatnam is still about 618 kilometers from this point. Now we are crossing the Kovuru Nellore new bridge, which stretches over the Penna River. This spot is quite popular with the locals. Early mornings here are filled with joggers and runners. And trust me, it's a beautiful place to catch a sunrise or sunset. Just a quick fact for you. This bridge connects Kovur and Nellore. It's about 610 meters long, 9.61 feet above the riverbed, and stands 42.55 feet above sea level. Let me tell you a local legend that still lives in whispers around this water. Locals believe that the Penna River is not just a river, it's a guardian spirit. Generations ago, during a long drought, the people of this region prayed to the river like a goddess. They say one night, under a full moon, a mysterious fog covered the banks, and by morning, the rains had returned. Since then, villagers say that whenever there's a storm or a cyclone, like Michaung now, the Penna River rises not just with water, but with power. And if you listen closely during heavy rain, like right now, they say you can hear the river whisper, as if it's warning travelers and blessing them at the same time. Sounds like a myth, right? But then again, look around. With this rain, these winds, and the river beneath, who knows what's legend and what's real? We took a quick break here. Still a long way to go. Kolkata is around 1489 kilometers from here. We paused here to check the latest weather update, because driving in cyclone conditions requires all the caution we can get. Now we are passing through North Rajupalayam in Andhra Pradesh, pin code 524366. The rain hasn't slowed down a bit, and the roads are getting more and more challenging. Now at 8:38, check this out, NH16 curves into a sharp arch, almost a 90-degree turn here. We are making our way toward Ongole, which is still about 110 kilometers ahead. Also, a quick location update. Balasore is still 1229 kilometers away from this point. The rain just keeps pouring down. Our GPS and network signal both started dropping, making navigation even trickier. We are relying purely on road signs and gut instinct now. By 12:26, we are still pushing through the storm. It's not easy, but we chose to keep driving, because if we stop somewhere in these conditions, we might end up getting stuck for days, and that's a risk we didn't want to take. Honestly, this has been a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Driving through rain for an hour or two is one thing, but driving almost the entire journey under a cyclone, that's a whole different level. We had to stop again here for a moment, not out of fatigue, but to check the road conditions ahead and the latest weather update. Safety first, always. Look at this time frame, water is collecting on the highway itself, and vehicles are creating massive splashes as they cross. It's especially risky for fast-moving vehicles, and this part really demanded full attention while driving. We are now crossing the Musunur toll plaza, paid 60 rupees here. The exact location is marked in the highlighted section of the video, if you want to check it out. Up ahead, a digital billboard flashes a clear warning. Heavy rain ahead. Drive slow. These signs are crucial in such weather conditions, and we are taking every one of them seriously. From here, Vijayawada is still 226 kilometers away, and Visakhapatnam lies another 564 kilometers ahead. The journey is long, but we are staying focused and moving steadily. The highway looks quiet, doesn't it? Just us, this endless road, and the storm. You know, there's a story I heard from a long-distance truck driver, something that happened not too far from here. It was during a cyclone like this. Rain hammering down, wind shaking the trees. He was driving late at night on a stretch of NH16, not unlike this one. Long, lonely, with barely a vehicle in sight. Suddenly, he saw a man standing right in the middle of the median divider, soaked in rain, staring straight ahead. No umbrella, no bag. Just standing there. The truck driver slowed down, rolled down his window, and shouted, "Hey, do you need help?" The man didn't respond, didn't move, didn't blink. Thinking it might be someone in shock or hurt, he stopped the truck a few meters ahead, turned on his hazard lights, and walked back. But there was no one there. He looked around, nothing. Not even footprints on the wet road. Confused, he got back in the truck and continued driving. But here's the scary part. A few kilometers later, just as he was passing under a dimly lit flyover, he saw the same man standing on the other side of the road. Same clothes. Same blank stare. The driver floored the accelerator. He didn't stop till morning. When he told the story at a local dhaba, someone whispered, "You saw him too? That's the spirit of the man who died there during a flash flood. He waits on the highway, hoping someone will finally take him home." Since then, drivers say, if you see a man standing alone in the rain, don't stop. Because some rides are not meant to be given. Highways like this, long, silent, soaked in rain, always feel a bit surreal. You start to wonder, what's waiting just outside the headlights? There's another story I've heard from several nighttime drivers, and it still gives me chills. It's about a woman, always seen walking alone, near highway curves, just after midnight or during heavy rainstorms like this one. They say she wears a red sari, completely drenched, and carries nothing but a small metal tiffin box in her hand. She doesn't ask for help. She doesn't wave. She just appears right near your rear-view mirror. One driver, who swore never to drive after that night, said he first saw her standing beside the divider. He glanced at her, then checked his mirror, and she was sitting in his back seat. He panicked, slammed the brakes, looked back. Nothing. The seat was empty. He stepped out of the car, confused, heart pounding. And then, he heard it. The soft metallic clink of a tiffin box, opening, right behind him. But no one was there. Just a small wet handprint, on the side window. Local villagers say this woman was a school teacher from a nearby town, who died in a road accident years ago. It was raining, she was heading home late, and no one stopped to help. Now, they say, she walks the highway during storms, looking for someone to share her last meal with. And if you ever offer her a lift, your car might not be the only thing that gets soaked. Your soul might never leave that road again. now just 36 kilometers from Ongole, and Bhubaneswar is still 951 kilometers away. Every milestone we pass feels like a small victory against this relentless rain. We are now about to cross the Tanguturu toll plaza in Andhra Pradesh, and honestly, it's one of the most impressive toll plazas on NH16. There's a huge area for parking, And what really stands out is the Skyview restaurant built right on top of the plaza. Such a cool feature for travelers. We paid 100 rupees here and continued on our way. Next, we pass through the Bengaluru area, pin code 523272. The surroundings are still soaked, but the road remains smooth and wide. A billboard up top catches our eye. It says Vijayawada is 154 kilometers ahead, and Kolkata? Still 1,362 kilometers to go. A long road lies ahead, but every signboard keeps our spirits aligned with the destination. From here, we start skirting the edge of Ongole city. NH16 doesn't pass directly through the city. It sweeps around it like a kind of outer ring road. This stretch is a 3-lane highway, wide and open. And if you notice, we've been driving all alone on this road for the past 10 minutes. No traffic, just us, the rain, and the sound of tires splashing through puddles. It's peaceful, but a little airy too. Up ahead, a sharp 90-degree turn, paired with an overbridge. Moments like these remind you to slow down and stay sharp, especially when visibility is low. We are now flying past Thruvaganta at full speed on NH16. It's almost 5:50 p.m, the sky is getting darker, and the rain is still hanging around. We've got one thing on our mind now: reach Vijayawada, no matter what. We are now crossing an Indian oil petrol bunk in the Maddipadu area. Right nearby, we found a spot called New Punjabi Family Dhaba, but unfortunately, it was closed due to the cyclone. Still, we took a quick break here, just to breathe, stretch a bit, and grab some snacks we had packed in the car. Sometimes, that little pause makes a big difference on a journey like this. So in this part of the journey, we've covered around 175 kilometers, starting from Nellore Toll Plaza all the way to the Maddipadu area, just past Ongole. I hope you are enjoying this road trip series as much as I've enjoyed documenting it. I've tried to include every little detail to make you feel like you're right here with me. Thanks a lot for sticking around and being part of this adventure. Stay tuned for the next part, where we'll push further ahead through this wild ride. Until then, take care and drive safe.